Have you ever wondered about the history behind the card game that we all know and love? Welcome to the channel, Chronicles of Magic the Gathering, where we explore deep dives behind the cards that we play week in and week out. We're introducing a new series to go right along with our lore deep dives, looking at the history behind the card game. One part of the week will have this video, and the next part will have the other. 2 videos in 1 week, exploring the rich history and the rich lore of Magic the Gathering. I'm going to throw it over to my good friend now, and he's going to take us through the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you'd like to see more videos like this. Let's dive in.
1993. The world of gaming was a landscape of dice, dungeons, and digital pixels. It was a world on the brink of a revolution it didn't even know was coming. In a small, unassuming office in Seattle, surrounded by the scent of old coffee and the quiet hum of computers, a handful of dreamers at a tiny company called Wizards of the Coast were sitting on an idea. It was more than an idea, it was a lightning strike. A trading card game called Magic the Gathering. The concept was forged, the vision was set, but the game itself was still just a ghost. It existed only in handwritten notebooks and rough pasted together prototypes. The spark of genius was there, but it had yet to be captured on cardboard. Today, we tell the story of what happened next. The story of the frantic, chaotic, and legendary process of turning a dream into a reality. This is the story of Alpha, the set that started it all, broke all the rules, and changed gaming forever. Turning Magic from an idea into a physical product was a Herculean task. The game's architect, Richard Garfield, had the core design. The Wizards of the Coast had very little money and even less time. They were building an entirely new type of game from the ground up, and every single decision was a step into the unknown. First, there was the art. Today, Magic's art is iconic, with a unified and polished style that defines its vast multiverse. But back then, there was no style guide, there was no art director breathing down necks, there was only a shoestring budget and a desperate need for images. Wizards reached out to a motley crew of fantasy artists, many of whom were just starting their careers. They were given a simple list of card names: Shivan Dragon, Sarah Angel, Vesuvan Doppelganger, and let loose with immense creative freedom. The result was a glorious, chaotic mosaic. The art of Alpha was inconsistent. It was weird. It was beautiful. Some pieces were breathtaking masterpieces of fantasy art. Others were charmingly amateur. A demonic tutor looks like he's from a Saturday morning cartoon, while the Lord of the Pit feels like he was torn from a heavy metal album cover. But this very inconsistency gave the game its soul. Every card felt like a distinct artifact, a grimy window into a strange new world. They weren't just creating game pieces, they were building the visual foundation of the multiverse, one painting at a time, without a blueprint. Simultaneously, the rules themselves were still in flux, like wet clay on a potter's wheel. The rulebook was being written as the cards were being designed. Imagine trying to build a car while simultaneously inventing the concept of the wheel. This led to all sorts of bizarre and confusing text on the cards. Some rules were paragraphs long, trying to explain complex interactions in a game that had no established vocabulary. Others were so vague they were almost philosophical. Take the card Rock Hydra. The text on the card was a labyrinthine set of instructions about how to add and remove counters. They were literally inventing the language of trading card games as they went along, and the cards themselves became fossil records of that messy, brilliant process. This wasn't a flaw, it was a sign of just how new this all was. With the art and design finalized, Wizards faced their next great hurdle: printing the cards. But you couldn't just go to any printer. No one had ever printed a product like this before. They needed a company that could handle high-quality cardstock, vibrant colors, and most importantly, the randomization. The entire addictive concept of the booster pack relied on the ability to package cards randomly. It was the game's secret sauce. After a long search, they found a partner in a Belgian company called Cartamundi, one of the few printers in the world capable of handling such a strange and specific request. Wizards of the Coast, a company running on fumes and faith, placed their order for the first ever print run of Magic the Gathering. The total number of cards printed for the Alpha set was approximately 2.6 million. To Peter Adkinson and the team at Wizards, that number sounded astronomical. It was a mountain of cardboard. They were a tiny company selling a brand new, unproven game in a niche market. They cautiously predicted that this supply would be enough to last them for months, maybe even the rest of the year. They had no idea what was about to happen. Magic the Gathering officially released in August 1993, first appearing at the Origins Game Fair in Dallas, Texas. The response was not just positive, it was a wildfire. Word of mouth spread through the convention hall like a spell. Players were utterly captivated by the experience of opening a booster pack. The thrill of the unknown, the crinkle of the foil, the joy of discovering a powerful new card. For the first time in history, gamers were experiencing the addictive rush of cracking a pack. What rare would you get? A mighty Shivan dragon? A mysterious Lord of the Pit? Or maybe something truly legendary? This ritual, which is now central to the entire TCG world, was born in that moment in the hands of those first curious players. The 2.6 million cards that Wizards thought would last for months, they sold out, completely, in a matter of weeks. The game was an instant, runaway success that caught everyone, including its creators, by a complete surprise. The demand was a tsunami that shattered all expectations. But the success came with problems. As the initial frenzy settled, players quickly noticed the imperfections, the charming scars of Alpha's rushed birth. The corners on the Alpha cards were rounded much more dramatically than later sets, making them instantly recognizable like an old, well-worn coin. And the set was riddled with printing errors. Some cards were missing mana costs entirely. Others had wildly incorrect rules text. The card, Circle of Protection Black, was infamously missing its activation cost, making the printed version a completely useless piece of cardboard. Yet, these flaws didn't hurt the game. In a strange way, they made it more real. They became part of its legend. Owning a misprinted Alpha card became a badge of honor, a tangible piece of gaming history. It was proof that you were there at the very beginning in the untamed wilderness. And in that wilderness, players began to discover monsters. Cards that weren't just good, they were on a completely different level of reality. Cards that didn't just bend the rules of the game, they shattered them. These were the cards the designers, in their uncharted journey, had made far too powerful. Today, they are spoken of in hushed, reverent tones. They are known as the Power 9. There was Ancestral Recall, letting you draw 3 cards for a single blue mana, an effect so efficient it's almost laughable. Time Walk, giving you a whole extra turn for just 2 mana. Then there was the Fast Mana, the 5 Moxen, Pearl, Sapphire, Jet, Ruby, and Emerald. Artifacts that cost nothing to play and tapped for mana, accelerating the game to impossible speeds. But towering above them all was one card, the most famous, most powerful, and most valuable trading card ever printed. A simple flower illustrated by Christopher Rush, the Black Lotus. It cost 0. You sacrificed it to add 3 mana of any color. A Black Lotus on turn 1 meant the game was practically yours. It was a supernova in a game designed for candles. The designers had no concept of how these effects would warp their creation. They had created the first ever TCG, and in doing so, they had also created the first ever broken cards. The Power 9 weren't just game pieces. They were artifacts of immense power that would define the game for decades to come. The release of Alpha did more than just launch a successful game. It unleashed a cultural phenomenon. It created a secondary market overnight and sparked the first ever tournament scene. Alpha wasn't perfect. It was messy, unbalanced, and full of mistakes. But its raw, untamed power was made it so magical. It was a snapshot of a brilliant idea at the moment of its explosive birth. Wizards of the Coast, caught off guard, had to scramble. They needed more cards, and they needed them fast. Their solution would set the stage for Magic's global domination. Next time, we'll explore the immediate aftermath, the release of Beta and Unlimited, the sets that cleaned up the errors and solidified the game. And we'll look at the first ever expansion that proved Magic the Gathering was not a fluke, but a force of nature that was here to stay. Arabian Nights.